everyone, and welcome to another edition of Quaran-Stream, the show where EW staffers give some recommendations on what to watch, what to listen to, and so much more, all while practicing social distancing at home. I'm Senior TV Editor Gerrad Hall, and I'm joined today by Staff Editor David Canfield, Senior Digital News Editor Jessica Derschowitz, and Digital Writer Maureen Lee Lenker. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
It's so nice to see your faces.
Guys, on this show, we've talked a lot about TV and movies that you can watch and music you can listen to, video games you can play to escape from reality a little. But it's also the perfect time to dig into a good book. David, what book would you recommend to someone who's looking to immerse themselves in a great read right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Very timely one, David.
Very timely. Spoiler alert. It's interesting. We've been running this quarantine book club on EW.com, and I've learned that a lot of my colleagues have changed their reading habits over the course of quarantine, including some on this Zoom today. And so my pick is one that another staffer, Say Rankin, picked, which is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which may sound like a very depressing and unfortunate pick for right now because it is literally about a pandemic and the aftermath. But I find a lot of hope in this book right now. And it's also one that, racked up a bunch of literary awards. It was on our best books of the decade list because it's really about humanity and resilience and what carries on after a pandemic potentially much worse than COVID-19 wipes out a substantial part of the population. And the author Emily St. John Mandel has this beautiful approach to structure that keeps the pages turning, keeps you very surprised, and there's a nice little surprise at the end. It's a lovely read.
Her sentences have novels in them. Like
exactly.
A short sentence can just have so much in it. And it's just such a beautiful book. I've reread it now like 2 or 3 times. Not recently, definitely not during this current time. But it's such a beautiful book. So I definitely, you're making me want to pick it up again now. And there's going to be an HBO Max series.
Yeah, there you go.
I grew up an avid EW reader, and so I remember the review of it when it first ran. Yeah. And I immediately went out and bought it as soon as that review ran. But I never got around to reading it. And now I'm sort of in that space where I'm like, I don't really know if this will make me feel better right now or not. But I'll have to give it a try.
No, David's right that there's a lot of hope in it.
Jessica, you picked a wonderfully classic book with kind of an equally wonderful film adaptation they can watch after. Do tell.
Yeah, numerous film adaptations, actually. You can take your pick. So I took the classic instruction for this episode very literally, and I chose Little Women, which is a book that I love dearly. I read it when I was 10 years old. Around the time, not long after that, the 94 version of Little Women came out with Winona Ryder. And it's certainly not a movie about staying at home, but in my head it feels very homey. It's just so much about like a family and the dynamic between siblings, and I feel like everybody has the March sister that they identify with the most, and there's just something really familiar about taking something. I've been rewatching a lot of things during this time. I've talked a lot about how I've been going
Shout out to New Girl.
Indeed, I've been going back through New Girl, and then Community is going to be next on my list after that. But there's something, I think, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, about going into these familiar things at a weird time. Like, you know how the story is going to end. You know that it's something you like. And this is a story that is just very comforting for me. And then, as you said, Gerrad, the excellent Greta Gerwig adaptation is out on home video now. So you could read the book and then watch the movie. For people with slightly older children, it might be nice to use it as a way to talk about literature or the Civil War and just bringing it into educational context that way. Yeah. Or you can just watch a really good movie and read a really good book.
That is so true. Very, very good recommendation. I love it. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned because there is more Quaran-Stream coming at you in a minute. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of today's episode of Quaran-Stream. Today we're talking about books that are perfect for some social distance reading. Now, there's nothing better than a good old-fashioned romantic novel to distract you from the fact that you've been in the same place for over a month, going on 2 months for some people. But, Maureen, what book would you recommend to someone who's looking to transport themselves with a classic love story right now?
Yeah, well, so I also took the prompt of classic very literally, and I'm probably getting a reputation on this show for having props, but I chose Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen because there is so much humor and light and levity and romance in this book. It is a little bit of a satire, but it's also a sweeping romance, one of the best romances ever told between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. And I also chose it because I think Austen is really perfect for social distancing. There was a meme going around on the internet that was all of these shots of couples from Austen adaptations of them looking at each other longingly from like 6 feet apart or further. And I think that is really apt. These books are... they weren't living through a pandemic when Austen was writing, but it was a lot more isolating time, especially if you lived in a country or in the country or far outside of town. You maybe didn't see anybody but your family for days on end. And then because of propriety and social mores, romancing someone, there wasn't a lot of touching. Just the brush of knuckles across someone's hand or something like that could be really erotic. And so right now, when we're not really allowed to even hug the ones that we love, I think it's a really comforting expression of how we can love each other and express romantic feelings when we're not allowed to touch each other.
Yep.
But then also, in addition to that being a really apt for a moment, it's just very funny and light. And so it should take you away and be a nice escape, which I think everyone can use right now. And I feel like a lot of people maybe think of this book as something that they were required to read in school and maybe did or did not follow that instruction. So I think it's a good time to revisit something that maybe you looked over in years past.
I definitely have a different appreciation for things that I've read on my own that I was required to read in school. When it's kind of more on your time and you're able to absorb the things you want from it and not what is kind of being told that you should be paying attention to. It's a very different experience for sure. All right, so we've discussed some of the books you'd recommend to those at home, but who are some of the classic authors you'd recommend people check out? A quarantine reading list, if you will.
Oh, man.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Specific
actually,
authors.
my backup pick was Pride and Prejudice. And it's interesting what you say, Gerrad, about going back to these books that we know and that maybe we read in high school, because one of the things I love about Pride and Prejudice is that there are several incredible audiobooks of this particular novel. And in fact, for the entirety of Jane Austen's catalog, particularly Pride and Prejudice, Rosamund Pike does the most hilarious, amazing recording of this book. And
I love
there
her.
are, yeah, it's,
that.
she does, I mean, she does so many different characters and every voice is so distinct and so hilarious, and some are like ridiculously over the top and others are more empathetic. It really is like probably the best performance she'll ever give, and I mean that in the most positive way. That is the one that comes to mind, but I would say Jane Austen and balancing, because exactly what Maureen said, and balancing different ways of exploring her stories, because they have obviously been adapted for the screen, but there's also great recordings of them from various other famous narrators as well.
I will also go with the British author, but I will go a little more modern, reinterpret the classic prompt and say this will shock nobody in this room but J.K. Rowling, and rereading all the Harry Potter books, which there are also some very excellent audio recordings of as well. But again, talking about a book series that I love dearly and have reread numerous times throughout my life, but I just get something different from them every time. And her world building is so exciting, and it's just fun going back to them all the time. So I'm sure eventually, the longer this draws on, I will pick up right on that bookshelf behind me my ratty copy of Sorcerer's Stone from when I was in junior high school, and just keep going from there.
And couldn't we all use a little magic right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I am also going to go a little more modern and say David Mitchell, who wrote Cloud Atlas, as well as many other wonderful books. Cloud Atlas is a personal favorite of mine because really the major theme of it is how we as people, the impact of our lives can transcend space and time in ways that we can't even comprehend. And I think right now, where we're really craving connection and feeling stuck in a lot of ways, that's a really powerful concept to engage with.
Love it. You guys have given all some great picks. David, can you tell everyone one more time about the book club?
Yes, so on EW.com, various staffers are writing little diary entries, little essays, basically just talking about how they're reading, what they're reading. Maureen actually kicked it off I think it was like about a month ago now. I cannot believe it has been that long. Sort of about her struggle to read and focus in the wake of everything that was going on, because it is, I mean, even for me, it's been hard at times to just sit with a book. And I'll tease the method by which she was able to get back into it. And there's just, it's a series that I love because it sort of brings me into other people's experiences in a new way, and also introduces me to some excellent books.
And so we beat on boats against the current, aka we've come to the end of this literary episode.
What's that from again?
Of
Welcome Gatsby, great way to go out.
It works, right? It works. Thanks to David Canfield, Jessica Derschowitz, and Maureen Lenker for joining me on this page-turning adventure, and thanks to all of you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode of Entertainment Weekly's Quaran-Stream. Until then, I'm Gerrad Hall. Stay safe and stay inside.